Hi everyone, welcome to EduKaji. My name is Cikgu Gan. I'm the biology textbook author. Today I will discuss Selangor trial paper set 1 2022. Okay, let's begin, yeah? Now, diagram 1 shows the level of cell organization in human. So you have cell P, cell Q, tissue P, tissue Q, the skin, and then system R. Okay, name cell P and cell Q. So here, you can see that the cell P here is smooth muscle cell, yeah? Now, you have to be very specific because the shape of the cell is actually smooth muscle. Okay, and the second one is what is cell Q? Now, cell Q is red blood cell, right? Okay, next. Cell P and cell Q have different shape and structure. State the process that causes the difference. Okay, so cell P and cell Q, you can see that they have different type of shape and also carry out different functions. So the process that causes these differences is actually differentiation. Next, name system R. So you can see here cell P and cell Q both form the organ, skin organ, and then the skin organ form part of the system R. So the system R is integumentary system. Okay, state the role of system R to human. So the integumentary system protect our body from physical injury. Okay, also from infection and dehydration. Next, state the level of organization for the skin. Now, the skin is an organ. Why is it an organ? Because it consists of different type of tissues. So an organ consists of different type of tissues. The answer here is organ. Okay, next, let's look at question 2. Now, question 2 shows the growth curve of a type of plant that live in temperate climate. Now, this is a temperate climate that has summer, winter, spring, autumn, yeah? So identify the type of plant that show the growth curve as shown in diagram 2.1. So this is a perennial plant. Okay, a perennial plant can grow throughout the year. Give 2 examples of plants that have a growth curve as shown in diagram 2.1. Now, most of the plant that you see in your everyday life is actually perennial plant. This include fruit tree like mangosteen and also maybe durian. Diagram show a cross-section of a tree taken from the temperate area. Okay, so you can see this one is a temperate area tree. Estimate the age of the tree. So the age of the tree is counted by the ring, the lighter ring and the darker ring. So you can start by counting the darker here. The dark ring and the lighter ring both form 1 year. Okay, dark plus light is equal to 1 year. Okay, so it's a 1 year annual growth. Annual growth consists of dark and light ring. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the answer is 9 years. Now here you don't count this one because this is part of the epidermis that form the bark already. Okay, so we count the ring here, which is actually represent the age of the tree. The ring actually is formed by xylem. Now, describe the formation of annual ring. Now, the annual ring is formed because of secondary growth, right? So the secondary growth has occurred. So how does the secondary growth occur? Because of the cambium ring or the cambium, vascular cambium is active during spring, all right? So when they are active during spring, they divide very rapidly. Okay. And therefore forming large xylem vessel. Okay, so in order to transport more water and mineral during spring, all right? And then during autumn, so this spring wood, we call it lighter in color. And during autumn, the cambium is less active. So the xylem, secondary xylem that is formed are smaller in diameter and they are more thickened with lignin. Okay, so because of that, the wood that is formed during autumn or early winter, late autumn are usually very dark. Okay, they are darker in color. Okay, so because of in 1 year, there is one lighter color and one darker secondary xylem. Therefore, you can know the age of the tree by the number of rings that is formed on the stem, right? So one lighter and one darker is equal to 1 year old. Okay, next, let's look at question 3. Now, in question 3, this is a plasma membrane with the extracellular fluid shown here and also the cytoplasm. So look out for little things like ATP, number of molecules found outside, inside. So that will give you an indication what they are trying to ask in this question. So first of all, name structure P. Now, structure P is a carrier protein. Okay, a carrier protein, because you can see that ATP, one of the phosphate group, has been attached to the carrier protein. Name the type of transport shown. Now, this is, of course, active transport because you can see the ATP, the phosphate group, one of the phosphate group is attached to the carrier protein. So this is active transport. Now, explain the transport of ion Q across the plasma membrane. Now, they already mentioned that Q and R are ions that are involved in sodium-potassium pump. So Q and R are ions involved in sodium-potassium pump. So here, they want you to discuss about ion Q across the plasma membrane. Now, you see the Q is denoted by the shape of a hexagon shape, while R is an oblong shape. So in terms of number of molecules, the Q has lesser number inside the cell, more outside the cell. But for R, there are more molecules inside compared to outside. So therefore, if they want to know about Q, now Q you can see is being transported from lower concentration to outside, which is higher concentration. So you can see here that Q, the hexagon shape, 3 enter into the carrier protein, and then the carrier protein change shape to release out the Q, right? So Q here is actually sodium ion. So you can see the direction in which they are transported is from lower concentration to higher concentration. All right, so it's against the concentration gradient. So it requires energy. So we're going to discuss only Q, which is the sodium ion. So the sodium ion, first of all, will have to bind to the carrier protein. Okay, after binding to the carrier protein, as you can see from the diagram, you see one ATP phosphate here. One of the phosphate will have to be attached to the carrier protein. So here the carrier protein has a site for the phosphate to attach. So the ATP will provide energy after the phosphate attached to the carrier protein. It will provide energy to the carrier protein, and then the carrier protein will change shape, okay, to allow the ion, okay, ion Q here, which is also sodium ion, to be transported through the carrier protein, and this process against the concentration gradient. Okay, so you can see here, they want 3 marks here. So here, the points here are more than 3 marks actually. There are at least 5 marks here, but it's always good to give more than what is required. Okay, so here you can see here, the phosphate here, after attaching, the shape of the carrier protein has changed from N shape like this to a U shape. Okay, so the ATP phosphate group changes the shape of the carrier protein to allow the sodium ion to be transported out of the cell. Okay, so next we see the next question, C. Diagram 3 shows the application of liposome in the field of pharmacy. Now, explain the advantage of using liposome in the effective administration of vaccine to the individual. Now, liposome is actually consists of like our phospholipid bilayer, but except that it's in the form of a vesicle here. So you can see the hydrophilic head here outside, and there's another hydrophilic head inside here, and the hydrophobic tail are facing each other. So the bilayer phospholipid has actually formed into a vesicle shape. This vesicle then will allow certain drugs, medicine or vaccine to be transported to the targeted cell without being destroyed. Okay, so we want to ensure that whatever we put inside here can be transported without damage. Okay, so here this one is an aqueous solution here. So the vesicle here, they ask what is the advantage of using liposome. So liposome here is a vesicle that consists of a bilayer phospholipid. Okay, now next, this is to protect the vaccine from being destroyed. So in this way, the vaccine can reach the targeted organ or tissue. Okay, so it is used to protect whatever you want to transport against through the plasma membrane. Okay. Right. Next, we go to question 4. Question 4 is from 5 chapter here. Okay. Diagrams show 3 types of plant, R, S, and T. Name the type of nutrition of plant R and T. Now, plant R here, you can see this is chapter 3 of form 5. Plant R is a carnivorous plant. And plant T is epiphytic. Now, so if you look at the diagram, the difference between plant S and plant T, plant S is a parasitic because you can see that the roots has actually penetrated the host. So when you see roots going into deep into the host, this is the host, then you know that this is a parasitic plant. While you look at T, T doesn't have roots that penetrate into the host. This is the host, but it actually have roots that dangle outside. So this is an epiphytic plant. Okay, so that's how you can tell the difference between an epiphytic and a parasitic plant. Okay, state how plant S obtain water and mineral salt to survive. Okay, plant S, right? Now, earlier I said that plant S is a parasitic. So in order to receive nutrient, okay, salt, water, this willow tree has to have roots because it has roots that can penetrate into the host xylem. Okay, right? Okay, I hope you can understand now. All right, so let's move on. Diagram 4.2 show a cross-section of a eudicote plant root structure. Explain the adaptive characteristic of structure X and Y to ensure the root to perform function effectively or efficiently. Yeah. Okay, so X is xylem. You need to know that X is xylem and Y is phloem. Okay, so here, in order for X and Y to be able to function efficiently, 3 marks, look at it, it wants 3 marks. Now, the xylem and the phloem tissue are surrounded by pericycle tissue. Okay, so it's pericycle tissue. And this has allowed the xylem to transport, give the function, the xylem tissue to transport water and mineral easily, mineral salt. No? And also the xylem, another thing you can see from the picture is that xylem and phloem are arranged in a star pattern or star shape. Huh? Okay. Xylem and phloem arranged in a star pattern. Okay, and phloem is to allow or to transport organic substances. So here, because they are looking at how xylem and phloem can function efficiently, is the pattern in which they are arranged allow water to continuously diffuse into the xylem, which is in the middle. So that allow the xylem to carry out its function. And also the phloem is able to transport, all right, the organic substances. So both these tissues are located at the central of the root. Okay. Now state the effect on root function if the root epidermal cell are not modified to form root hair. Okay, not modified. So be careful of the question. Sometimes they put it negatively. So your answer should be, you see, if the root hair, now you know that root hair are modified to have long projection. Okay, so this long projection actually increases surface area for the absorption of water. But since the question asks why, what happened if it's not modified? So then the surface area of the root hair cannot be increased. Okay, therefore, transport of water become less efficient. Okay. Next, let's look at question 5. Now, in question 5, diagram show the process that take place in the ovary and fallopian tube. Name structure X, right? So this is in Form 4, chapter 15. So structure X here has been released through this process Z from the ovary. So structure X is secondary oocyte. State the hormone involved in the process. So the hormone that is involved in the process Z here is actually ovulation. So the hormone involved is luteinizing hormone. Now, you can also use short form LH. Explain the effect if the hormone stated in 5A2 is not produced. So if it's not produced, 5A2, that means if there is no luteinizing hormone, what would be the effect? So the question again is asking if it's not produced. So you got to give a answer in a negative way. Here, if there is no luteinizing hormone, then ovulation cannot occur. And ovulation, after ovulation occur, you know that the remaining follicle here, which is Y, will form corpus luteum. So if ovulation does not occur, so corpus luteum also will not be formed. And if there is no corpus luteum, therefore progesterone, which is secreted by corpus luteum, will also not be secreted. Okay, and when there is no progesterone, your endometrium wall also cannot be thickened. Okay, so that is the answer. All right, next, structure X was fertilized in the fallopian tube. Explain the role of structure Y during pregnancy. Okay, so X was fertilized. Okay, let's look at X. Just now, earlier I mentioned X is secondary oocyte. So they want to know what happened to structure Y if X is fertilized. Now, if X is fertilized, then structure Y will not degenerate. Structure Y will not degenerate. And that means it can continue to secrete progesterone And when progesterone is secreted, then you know already that it will stimulate the thickening of the endometrium. Okay, so when the endometrium is thickened, then only you know that this will allow implantation for the thickening is for the implantation of the embryo. Okay. Okay. Next, this is a flowering plant, all right? So you can see the pollen grain has dropped onto the stigma and stimulate the germination of a pollen tube. State one similarity and one difference between the fertilization in diagram 5.1 and 5.2. That means between human fertilization, all right, and plant. What is the difference between the fertilization between human and plant? Now, the similarity is, now you know that both produce a diploid zygote. Okay, and the difference is for human, we have human only one fertilization occur. While for plant, you have double fertilization. And another one is for human, we form fertilization produces one zygote, whereas for plant, fertilization produce one zygote and one triploid endosperm nucleus. So not just one zygote, but also one zygote and one triploid endosperm nucleus. Okay, now we go to question number 6. Now, question number 6 is on chapter 8 of Form 4. Diagram show the respiratory structure of a fish based on diagram 6.1, name P. So P is the gill filament. Fish have a large number of P. What is the purpose? Now, large number is always to provide a large surface area. Okay, large surface area for the exchange of gases. Okay, so we must answer the question which asks what's the purpose. Huh? The concentration of oxygen in the air is higher than in water. However, if the fish is on land, it will be gasping due to lack of oxygen. Using your biological knowledge, explain why this matter occurs. Now, you know fish, their medium in which they obtain oxygen is through water. So the gills are not adapted to obtain or absorb oxygen from the air. So they will be gasping for air because that's why they are not adapted to live on land. So their gills are modified to dissolve oxygen in water. Okay, and water also, so that means they cannot here, that means they cannot, the gills cannot absorb oxygen in the air. Okay, they cannot absorb oxygen directly from the air. Now, the second thing you must know is that the water actually gives support, buoyancy to the gill. Okay, water provide support. So if you take the fish out, then the buoyancy is absent to provide support for the gill structure. So what does that mean? That means the gill structure will compress, it will collapse, okay? It will stick together. It will not be opened up, right? So the gill filament will stick together, okay? And this will reduce the total surface area for gaseous exchange. Okay? So that is the answer why fish cannot live on land. Okay. Okay, next we have normal bronchus here and bronchus with bronchitis. Okay, so bronchitis, you know, is a type of disease suffered by certain people. Okay, so they ask one factor that causes bronchitis. Now, it can be due to smoking, it can be due to a viral infection. So here the question asks the difference between the structure of a normal bronchi and the bronchi with bronchitis. So the one on the left is a normal bronchi and this one is a bronchi with bronchitis. So the difference is, you can see from the picture that for a normal bronchus, there is no inflammation. Here, the bronchi is actually inflamed. Okay, next, the airways. The airways here, or we can also say the air, the passage for the air to flow. Okay, here the airways are normal, whereas here the airways are swollen and blocked. Okay, right? So let's see how many marks. 2 marks, so that is sufficient actually, but I can give you another one. For a person with normal bronchi, they don't have no symptom of persistent coughing. Okay, so normally people with bronchitis will have symptom of persistent coughing. Okay, why? Because just now I mentioned that the normal airways, if you have a normal airways, your airflow through the passage is not blocked, so you can breathe normal. Whereas a person who has the airways are swollen or blocked, then they will have difficulty in breathing. Okay. Okay, that is for the differences between a bronchitis, and a person with normal bronchus. Okay, question 7. Diagram show parts of the human digestive system. Identify structure P and the enzymes secreted. So the structure P here is the stomach. I'm sure you know that. P is stomach. And the enzyme secreted is pepsin. Explain the function of hydrochloric acid secreted by structure P. So as HCl always prepare a medium, an acidic medium, an acidic medium for the action of enzyme. So in this case here is for pepsin. Now HCl also stop the enzymatic reaction of salivary amylase. Now you know salivary amylase is found in your mouth. And lastly, the salivary amylase is from the mouth that when you swallow the bolus, it goes into your stomach. So it will stop the activity of salivary amylase. And the last one is, of course, to kill bacteria in the food. Okay, next. Structure Q produces substance R, which will be channeled into the duodenum. Name substance R. So substance R here, okay, Q produce. Q is liver. Liver produce bile. Bile is stored inside gallbladder and then channel down into the, this one is called duodenum. Right, so substance R is bile. The following statement is about a health problem related to eating habit. Acid reflux is the condition that shows a symptom of heartburn, vomiting, and chest pain. By using arrow, draw the direction of movement of acidic juice for the individual with acid reflux. Now the acid reflux here shows that acid actually moves upward towards the esophagus. So you draw an arrow upward. And then they want you to explain how acid reflux occurs. Now, it is because in between the stomach and the esophagus, there's a muscle here, and the muscle did not contract. So the muscle in between the stomach and the esophagus, okay, so did not contract properly, right? So as a result, your acidic juice, your gastric juice will flow back into the esophagus. So the contraction wasn't good here, right? So when the bolus have dropped into the stomach, it should contract to prevent backflow of the gastric juice. But since the muscle is not working properly, so it will not contract, so the gastric juice will flow back into the esophagus. Okay, question 8. State the role of R to ensure that the heart is functioned efficiently. Now, R is, of course, septum. So septum is to S-E-P-T-U-M, septum, separate the left and right heart. Okay, so this will ensure oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood do not mix. Okay, you want to separate them from mixing. Explain how oxygenated blood is transferred from the heart to the whole body. Okay, so here, from the heart to the whole body. Now you know that pulmonary vein is vein the only vein that transport oxygenated blood to from the lung to the left atrium. Okay, and okay, so let me write first the pulmonary vein, which is the P, in this diagram here, P, transport oxygenated blood from the lung to the heart. Okay, then to the heart, which is actually to the left atrium. Okay, so then the oxygenated blood flow into the left ventricle, right? And then after that, blood is pumped out through the aorta to the rest of the body. Okay, so we have 3 marks there. First, talk about the oxygenated blood transported by the pulmonary vein, then it enters into the left atrium, left ventricle, and finally it gets pumped out through the aorta to the rest of the body. Right, so it enters here. This is the left ventricle, and then finally pump out to aorta here, which is this one. Now explain the difference between blood vessel P and blood vessel Q. Now you need to know that you need to know what is blood vessel P and Q first before you can answer this question. So blood vessel P is pulmonary vein. Okay, this is pulmonary vein, and Q is pulmonary artery. Okay, so you can name the first difference is the name. So P is pulmonary vein and Q is pulmonary artery. Okay, so blood is transported. Here you can say oxygenated blood. No? Oxygenated blood is transported from the lung to the heart. Okay, this is point 1. This is point 2. This is number 2. Here, the oxygenated blood is transported from the heart to the lungs. Okay, point number 3 is, now for vein, you know that for vein, the general characteristic of vein is there are many general characteristics of vein. One of it is that it has thin, less elastic, muscular wall, whereas artery has thick, more elastic, and more muscular wall. Okay, so give at least 3 because they indicate here they want 3 marks. Okay, next, Madam Zack often felt dizzy, tired, short of breath, fainted easily. Doctor confirmed that she had bradycardia, which is slower heartbeat than a normal human heart. Diagram show a device that can be used to treat bradycardia. Suggests how this device function to treat the problem faced by Madam Z. Now, this device works as artificial. This device is Medtronic Mirka, is an artificial pacemaker. So you can see that she has this problem of having slower heartbeat. So doctor will probably insert this to help to generate impulse. So this device generate impulse to stimulate the contraction of heart muscle. Okay, so in this way, his heartbeat rate can be increased. Back to normal. Okay, so that is the answer for this question. All right, now we have reached section D, which is the essay. Okay, diagram 9.1 show two types of neuron in the nervous system. Okay, name neuron X and neuron Y. So this is quite simple. Neuron X is, look at the cell body is right at the end of the cell. So this is a motor neuron. Okay, this is a sensory neuron because of the cell body is found in the middle of the cell. State the role of neuron X and Y in the nervous system. So X is to transmit, motor neuron, transmit nerve impulse from spinal cord to the effector. Whereas sensory neuron sensory neuron here is transmit nerve impulse from the receptor to the relay neuron. Okay. Next, a patient this shows the transmission of neurotransmitter and the type of drug across the synapse. Okay, so a patient was injected with a type of drug to reduce pain. Explain how the drug can reduce the pain. Now, this patient has been injected with a type of drug that reduces pain. The keyword here is reduces pain. So a drug that reduces pain is a depressant drug, right? It's a depressant. So he has been injected with a depressant drug. Now, what does this drug do is that this drug blocks the release of neurotransmitter by the synaptic vesicle. Okay, you can see in the diagram here, this dotted neurotransmitter, these are neurotransmitter here, are released by the synaptic vesicle. But if you have the presence of the drug, then it actually block the X is the drug. It actually block the release of this neurotransmitter. Now, if the neurotransmitter is not released, therefore, that would mean, okay, for the third point here, that the diffusion of neurotransmitter will be less, right? Okay, it will be less. Now, there are two things that this drug do. First is to block. The second one, okay, or this is the fourth point, besides blocking the release of the neurotransmitter, it also binds. The drug also bind to the receptor protein, or protein receptor. So here is the protein receptor protein, which, as you can see, the X are binding to it. That means it is blocking the binding of neurotransmitter to the receptor. So it binds, so therefore it blocks the neurotransmitter, short form I put NT, neurotransmitter, from binding to the receptor. Okay, so therefore now what is happening is that there is less neurotransmitter, the neurotransmitter is being blocked, therefore no new impulse can be generated. No impulse can be transmitted to the brain. So in other words, there is no interpretation of pain by the brain. Okay, so there's no interpretation of pain by the brain, right? So remember, block the release as well as block the binding of the neurotransmitter. Okay, next. Diagram 9.3 show two different responses by individual P and Q. So you can see here, this is a knee-jerk reflex. This is a boy playing football. Okay, so compare response P and Q. Now, for response P and Q, the response for P, okay, so you can draw a table like this because it is easier for examiner to mark. So from here, you can see P, name the response first. P is knee-jerk, Q is the kicking of the ball, and reflex. Knee-jerk is actually a reflex action, and kicking of a ball is actually voluntary. So reflex action is of course involuntary, because the question asks about comparison between the response. How did the response, how do they differ? Okay, so for reflex action, it involves two neurons only, the simplest form of action, which is only sensory and motor neuron. But if you are kicking a ball, which is a voluntary action, it involves three neurons, including the sensory neuron, relay neuron, and motor neuron. Now, reflex action are usually very, very quick, very automatic. It happens immediately. Whereas the action that you are doing by kicking the ball voluntarily is something at will. That means you know about it, is what you want to do, okay? So it's controlled by the brain, but for reflex action, it's not controlled by the brain, right? And the stimulus here, how do you cause the knee-jerk is that you need to knock the receptor that is found on the knee tendon, the receptor found on the stretch receptor. And here, the stimulus is from the light from the object. You look at the object, then you kick. Okay, the object is the ball. So the receptor is the stretch receptor. And here the receptor is the light receptor. Okay, so that's the difference. All right, now we go to question 10. The kidney function as an excretory organ by getting rid of toxic waste such as urea, uric acid, ammonia, and creatinine. Name P and Q. I think this is quite easy, right? This P is, what is P? P is glomerulus, right? And P here is glomerulus, and Q is Bowman's capsule. Based on the diagram, explain the process that occur between P and Q. So between P and Q here, ultrafiltration occur, right? Ultrafiltration occur. Okay, now you know that the glomerulus, which is actually a network of blood capillary, is only one cell thick, and the Bowman's capsule is also one cell thick. So both form a filtration membrane that is very thin and allow ultrafiltration to occur. Now, how does this ultrafiltration occur? Is due to the high hydrostatic pressure at P. Okay, so you see the afferent arterial diameter is larger than the efferent. So the blood that flows into the glomerulus comes at very high speed and high pressure. So that causes your blood plasma, all right, is filtered or forced out. Is filtered into Q. Okay. Now, everything in the blood plasma get filtered except plasma protein. Okay, plasma protein doesn't get filtered. Besides that, blood cell like erythrocyte and also platelet also does not get filtered. Now, these are too large for the plasma protein, erythrocyte, platelet are too large molecules for it to go through the filtration membrane, which I mentioned just now, between the Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. The molecule size is too large. Okay, diagram show a laborer working on a hot day. When the laborer urinates, the urine produced is very concentrated and low in volume. So explain why. Now, on a hot day, let's look at the answer here. On a hot day, you know that laborer will always sweat profusely. They will lose a lot of water through sweat, and therefore their blood osmotic pressure is definitely going to increase. Okay, so when BOP increase, this change in the blood osmotic pressure is detected by receptor. The name of the receptor is osmoreceptor. Okay, osmoreceptor is found in the hypothalamus, and once it's detected by osmoreceptor, it will send a nerve impulse to the pituitary gland, which will be stimulated to secrete more ADH. Now, ADH is antidiuretic hormone, which actually causes the reabsorption of more water. All right, so the wall, what happened now is the wall of the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct will become more permeable. So, you know, the collecting duct here, this is collecting duct. This is the distal convoluted tubule. Both these become more permeable to water because of the ADH hormone. And since more are secreted, the wall become even more permeable. So more water is reabsorbed into the blood capillary. So here, the blood capillary goes around the nephron. So let's say this is the tubule here. This is the blood capillary. So reabsorption occur in this direction from the tubule into the blood capillary. Right? More water is reabsorbed so that his blood osmotic pressure will decrease. Which means that the urine he produced will be less in volume and more concentrated. Okay, so you look back at the question, it says that the urine is more concentrated and low in volume. So because there are more water has been reabsorbed, therefore his urine will be less in volume and more concentrated. Okay, next diagram show two systems involved in human coordination. State the comparison between system X and Y. So X is the nervous system, Y is the endocrine system. So in terms of similarity, both systems send a signal to the effector. Now there's an effector involved in both systems and both will produce a response. So the differences is, first name the system first. This is nervous system, this is endocrine system. Okay, X is nervous, Y is endocrine. Now here I want a student, you need to remember aspect of differences, which is make it easier for you to remember. So here you look at the, in terms of what is the component of the nervous system. So the nervous system consists of neuron, brain, spinal cord. What are the components? For here, this endocrine system, of course, consists of endocrine gland and blood. Okay, because blood is, the hormone is secreted directly into the blood. Okay, now next is the aspect of signal or information. How is it being transmitted? So the signal here is in the form of impulse, whereas here is in the form of hormone. So messages are transmitted in the form of impulse and chemical, which is hormone. Okay. Now the signal are transmitted through what type? How is it transmitted? How is it transmitted? Okay, so you know that nerve impulse is transmitted through neuron, whereas for hormone, it goes directly into the bloodstream and get carried or flow according to the bloodstream. Next, the signal transmission is very fast, okay? And this is very slow. Now, the normal mistake that students do is instead of writing a full sentence, they make it so point form. They just write fast, slow. Now, this does not help you to get any marks at all. You won't get marks here because you never state what is fast and what is slow. So you need to state that the transmission is fast and transmission is slow. Likewise here, you cannot just say this is immediate, this is not immediate. What is immediate and what is not immediate? You need to state that the response is immediate and here the response is not immediate. And the targeted organs are always limited. There's always one target organ, whereas for endocrine system, it involves several target organs. Now, next, the duration of the effect. That means how long is the response? We're talking about response now. How long is the response? The response is short, whereas the response here is long. And lastly, nervous system always control both voluntary and involuntary, whereas for an endocrine system is more for different type of processes that they are controlling, like they are controlling growth, they regulate the internal environment, so it's different different purpose and different role they play. Okay, all right, so let's move on to the last question, section C. Now, section C is a compulsory question that every student need to answer. Yeah. Now in earlier question 9 and 10, you can choose either or. Okay, so let's look at the definition of green technology. Now the meaning of green technology is you must state it refers to development or application of product, equipment, and system. Now, it is referring to the whole entire thing. The product you're producing, the equipment that you're using to produce the product, and the whole system that is involved in the production of the product must gear towards preserving the environment and nature, and must not, if possible, no effects or negative effects on human activities. There is no side effect that will cause negative impact on the environment or on human. Okay, so that is green technology. Now the diagram here shows application of green technology by using food waste. Here is some fruit waste that is being changed into an enzyme for cleaning. So here they ask you to suggest practices based on green technology that can be carried out by a housewife to sustain the environment. Okay, so here you can produce eco-enzyme from the food waste as cleaning agent. So eco-enzyme, because of food waste have enzyme, after you ferment it for a long time, it can become a very powerful cleaning agent. Or you can recycle food waste to produce natural organic fertilizer. So you don't have to buy fertilizer to fertilize your plant. Because here the question asks about practices. What can the housewife do to sustain the environment by applying green technology? Okay, next is in certain country, biogas is also produced from organic solid waste. Maybe not in our country so much, but in certain country, household actually produce biogas. Next is to produce flour from banana peel. Any kind of possible throw away by a housewife can be turned around to make into something useful, like bioplastic is one example. So housewife can collect all this banana peel and then maybe send to center that turn it into bioplastic manufacturing material. And lastly, of course, foliar fertilizer, which can be sprayed on the plant as growth promoter. Okay. Right. Next, a study conducted by a group of students on rainwater sample collected from industrial area found that the pH value of the rainwater sample were low. So this affect the environment. So explain the above statement. Now, pH low here, what is the cause? What do you think is the cause of this low pH? Now, usually is emission of acidic gases. Now, acidic gases such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, they actually can dissolve in water vapor, all right? Or in your rainwater to form acidic solution like sulfuric acid, nitric acid, carbonic acid. So when they dissolve in rainwater, they actually form acid rain. Okay, all this acid. Okay, now acid rain, now I'll go back to the question. It says that it affects the environment. So the pH of this sample affects. So we're going to see how does the acid rain, the low pH, affect the plant, okay, and the environment. Now, acid rain causes the soil to become very acidic, and when it is acidic, it's no longer fertile for the plant. So the soil becomes not suitable for crops. So this reduces the yield of the crop. So that is the effect of acidic rain on plant. Now, beside that, of course, there are many, actually the marks is only 4 marks, but the question here actually have a lot of answer, and you can actually answer more than 4, or you can just, answer 5 or 6 will do. Okay, besides that, acidic rain cause river water to become acidic. So your drinking water become acidic. It can also damage plant, damage the chlorophyll in the leaf, also damage the roots of the leaf, plant. And it also can cause death of aquatic organism. Now the question say environment, so it's very wide, the answer. It can cause the death of organism. It can also cause corrosion on your building that is made from stonework building or steel bridges and so on. Okay. All right. So now we reach the final question here. Diagram show deforestation in tropical rainforest. However, the environmentalists are worried about the bad effect of the activity. If you are an environmentalist, discuss the good and bad effects of deforestation to human. Okay, so there are good and bad effects. So what you do is you state first what are the good effects. Now, first of all, you know, when they open up a land for a forest land, they always have an intention for some kind of activities. So the good thing is that this area that has been opened up can be used for crop production or crop plantation or livestock, rearing of livestock. So therefore it's good, right? Because it will increase job opportunities for people around the area. It creates job for residents that live around the area. So, and then it will also develop that area into a new township, right? And this will increase the economic growth of the people in that area. And besides that, when you build build a city or build a new development, you are also building more infrastructure facilities. For example, maybe you improve the road system so people can travel in shorter time. And you can also increase more industry to supply very kind of diverse products. And also you can use the land for intensive agriculture. Okay. Now, of course, there are also bad effects for deforestation. Now, the first one is these three things, which is soil erosion, landslide, and flash flood. So when you open up a forest, there is no longer any trees to anchor or grip the soil. So definitely soil erosion is going to happen, and this will lead to landslide. And all this soil will flow into the river, and that causes the shallowing of the river. And the immediate effect is that every time it rains, will cause flash flood. Next is excessive use of pesticide, which is actually has a bad effect on plants, on pollinators, right? Next, excessive land use for intensive agriculture will increase demand for food supply. Okay, and this will lead to many activities that can cause, because of an increase for food supply, you can increase a lot of other associated problems like water pollution and excessive use of fossil fuel, burning of fossil fuel, which leads to greenhouse effect and global warming. And all this pollution also lead to more rubbish, more domestic waste that will affect the natural habitat of flora and fauna. So the natural flora and fauna are actually destroyed because of the opening of the new, the deforestation, and the biodiversity will be reduced, and this disrupt the food chain, which leads to an unbalanced ecosystem. Okay, so these are part of the answer. Now you here they give here 10, any 10. That means any 10 points from good or bad you can give as the possible answer. So you can see here, there are many answers for this question. It's an open-ended question, so it's pretty easy to score. Okay, so with that, I end this session for today. I'll see you soon. Bye.